Welcome to NCIX Tech Tips. We've got a special system edition of NCIX Tech Tips. I guess they're not that special. We do them almost every week or every other week, but we have so many cool systems. So what can I say? It's finally back to school time, although I saw back to school stuff showing up at local retailers as early as the very beginning of summer. So I think the whole back to school season thing has been really extended, but at least it's August now. This is our back to school PC. For $600, we are delivering what we think is pretty much an untouchable value, because inside this very small, very compact, very light PC enclosure is an 8-core processor and the capability for an extra $100 or so to upgrade it to be a very capable gaming machine. As usual, we'll start with the exterior of the PC. So for a $600 computer with an 8-core processor, you gotta save a couple bucks somewhere. So we went with a micro ATX form factor using a less expensive board that, however, is fully validated by Gigabyte to work with 8-core Bulldozer FX processors from AMD. We also went with a micro ATX enclosure. So this is the Core 1000 from Fractal Design. It has one filtered 120mm intake, and there's a good reason for why we've gone with that configuration. Using a single filtered intake and no exhaust other than the exhaust that's built into the power supply, you create positive air pressure inside the case. Because you have a filter on the only intake, it keeps dust from accumulating inside the computer. If you had negative air pressure, that is more exhaust than intake, then you can easily suck dust in through little gaps between the side panels or wherever else, and it accumulates in your case and gets circulated around in there. It can eventually cause problems, gunk up your heat sinks, all that good stuff. One filtered intake is the way to go if you're trying to use a small enclosure and do it on the cheap. Front I/O is actually located on the side of the case, so you can see right here we've got our power, front audio, 2 USB 2.0 ports, as well as a reset switch and our indicator LEDs. However, the first 20 systems are going to get a free upgrade to a 3.5-inch bay that has a couple USB, or rather one USB 3 port and a card reader. So you want to definitely grab one of these while they're still hot. We've got a DVD burner, which is pretty much to be taken for granted at this point. And then on the back of the case, we find pretty much the usual assortment of I/O. You're going to notice that there's no I/O shield. Your production system will come with one. It's because this is an engineering sample board in here. We wanted to make sure it was 100% validated with this 8-core processor and wasn't going to have any problems before we released this system to general consumers. So there's your power supply, you got your PS2, 4 USB 2.0 ports, VGA, HDMI, and DVI out, 2 USB 3.0 ports, as well as 5.1 audio out, although I'd really recommend only using it as 2.1 audio and a microphone, especially if you're going to throw in a low-end graphics card and do some gaming. So you got 4 expansion slots because it is using a micro ATX form factor. Now it's time to check out the interior of the case. I should also mention that if you buy it with a qualifying edition of it comes with Windows, Microsoft Office, then you will get free shipping for your order. So you won't even have to pay for shipping on your $599 PC. So let's go ahead and open up the side panel here. You can see there's more ventilation on the side panel. So if you did want to add extra cooling to the system, say if you added an additional graphics card, you would totally be able to do that. Now I love the Core 1000. It's a very small case, and from my reckoning, it's fairly inexpensive to manufacture, which is good because it allows you to save money on your system. So they've made the layout just like it's smart. So you can mount up to 2 hard drives or 3 2.5-inch SSDs using just this plate right here, which saved some money on the manufacturing, gives ample cooling space for the hard drives, gives great airflow to that fan that's intaking air at the front of the case, because normally the way hard drive cages are set up, almost none of the airflow from a front intake gets through. And I think everyone wins in scenarios like that. We're using a special board from Gigabyte. This is the 78LMT USB 3, which, as I mentioned before, due to its PWM cooling, in spite of it being a fairly low-end board, and the VRM design of the board, it is fully capable of handling the 8-core 8120 AMD FX CPU that we've got in here. 8 gigs of AMD Performance Edition RAM, and a 400-watt Seasonic 80+ bronze power supply round out the configuration. Now, There's no graphics card in there now, but the perfect edition would be a Radeon HD 7770, and you'd be able to install that and run it in the system for about another $100 and change without any additional changes to the configuration, including leaving the original power supply. It's got a 1 terabyte WD Blue drive, and that is pretty much all she wrote. Comes with Windows 7 Home Premium. Overall, we're pretty proud of this little beast in the NCIX lab because with an 8-core processor and 8 gigs of RAM, upgradable easily on the cheap to up to 16 gigs of RAM because the motherboard we're using does have 4 DIMM slots. You have the ultimate little, video editing workstation or productivity PC, or spend a little bit more, throw in a graphics card, and you have, see, it would look sort of like that, a very, very capable little gaming machine. And again, that would be close to a $750 price point. So yeah, it's really affordable. So thank you for checking out this PC Systems edition of NCIX Tech Tips, and don't forget to subscribe.